Right, hi everyone. Let me set some context for the video. This video is about developer productivity. Specifically, we'll be going through some terminal multiplexers, terminal-based IDEs, dotfiles, window managers that make you slightly more productive in case you incorporate them in your workflow. If all of these sound like buzzwords to you, the video is very tutorial based. So by the end of the video, hopefully you understand what they mean and how they make you more productive. The only disclaimer before the video starts is don't feel pressured into trying all of these together. Slowly incorporate them into your workflow. With that, let's get right into the video. So hi everyone, welcome to a video on developer productivity. In this video, I'll be taking you through some tools that make you slightly more productive as an engineer. A small disclaimer before we start. A lot of these are tools I've slowly incorporated. I did not know them on day zero. In fact, initially I spent almost 3 years using Sublime Text, then another 3 years using Visual Studio Code, then another 2 years using WebStorm. I keep switching my stack and IDs from time to time. Don't feel pressured into trying any of these, or don't feel that if I don't use these, I won't become a senior engineer. A lot of these you incorporate over time, and whenever you do, you will face some productivity hit. Specifically, the tools we're going through today include Vim, Vimium, Neovim, some window managers, something called dotfiles, specifically bash configuration files, and a tool called Tmux. Without any further ado, let's get right into the video. All right, the first thing we're discussing is something called V or Vim. V is a terminal-based editor. What does that mean? Before that, what does even a terminal mean? It is this black thingy that you might have seen from time to time. On a Mac machine or on a Linux-based machine, you can simply type terminal and it'll open, a black screen like this. On a Windows machine, you can open something called the command prompt, which will give you a similar black interface. But the commands that we'll be running here today will not work in that black interface. So you can do one of two things on a Windows machine. You can either install git bash, or you can install something called WSL that will give you access to a very similar bash based interface. If you don't do that, then some of the commands that we'll be running today will not work on your machine. So if you're on Windows, please install either a simple git bash interface or something called WSL that gives you access to a terminal similar to one on a Windows or a Linux based machine. Given that you have this, you can run this command called V or Vim that would open something like this. As you can see, it says by default Vim or V improved. The reason it says V improved is because the original editor was V that was introduced in 1990s, something like that. And Vim is a slightly more, advanced version of the same thing. By default, Vim would open on a bash terminal, but I think if you want to try, you can also open V. Unsure. If you by default press V or Vim, it will still open Vim for you. This is an editor. Harkirat, what is an editor? Visual Studio Code. This is very similar to Visual Studio Code. Only Visual Studio Code gives you 10 different things that this very naive terminal won't. Harkirat, if Visual Studio Code gives me so many things, why would I want to use this ugly editor? The answer is that a lot of times you want to write code in other people's machines. For example, let me quickly do something here and don't worry about what I'm doing. But if I run a specific command, I get access to the terminal of my Ubuntu machine running on the cloud. I repeat, this is an Ubuntu machine that is running somewhere in the US, but I was able to access it via a terminal, and I can press V over here and open a text-based editor over there. This is very hard to do inside Visual Studio Code. You can still do this, but it just gets overly complicated. And if you become very comfortable in V or Vim, then you can edit code not just in your local machine, but in your friend's machine or a machine that you might have back home, because it's slightly harder to create an RDP session or a GUI based session where you can access someone else's machine as well as their complete GUI. GUI stands for graphical user interface. So like everything that you see over here, it's just easier. If you want to access someone else's machine, just get bash access, just get terminal access, and you can run various commands over there. For example, I was running a bunch of commands in this Ubuntu machine. As soon as I ran the command exit, I exited out of it. The machine is still running. If I want, I can also reboot the machine. I'm not going to, but if I run the command sudo reboot over here, it would just restart the machine that's running somewhere in the US. So that's the benefit of using a terminal based editor. The other benefit is you can, always remain inside the terminal. You never need to leave the terminal or access any GUI. From inside the terminal, you can, edit files and do 10 different things. This might not feel like a very big thing initially, but as time goes by, you'll see your speed increases a lot if you sort of remain inside the terminal as much as you sort of remain inside the terminal. With that context on why you might need Vim, I'm going to share how you can start editing your first file. It's very complicated. It's not as easy as, going to Visual Studio Code and, creating a new file and start to edit it. It's much easier to do inside Visual Studio Code. If I create a new file called asd.txt, I can just start to, edit it. This gets very hard inside the terminal based editor, specifically Vim or, someone else. Vim isn't the only terminal based editor. You can use Nano. As you can see, it's a very similar editor that opens inside a bash session, but Vim is a good start. I think you should just stick to one, and Vim is more popularly used. Given that, let's try to understand how you can start editing your very first file. So I'm going to open the website on the left, and I'm going to open the editor on the right, and we'll start to go through all the commands that I've written here. We'll learn some, internals of Vim. All right. Before we start editing our first file in Vim, we need to understand the 3 modes that exist anytime you open a file in Vim: normal mode, visual mode, and insert mode. Let's start with the first one called normal mode. Let's say I have a file over here. I have a bunch of files. I can just open a Docker file over here. If I do vdocker file, and for you can open a random file that you might have on your machine and press enter. I see all the contents of this file. This is a random Docker file. Don't worry about the contents. But if I try to type anything, as you can see, there is a cursor over here. If I try to type anything, for example, J, you will see nothing is happening. I'm not able to type anything. In fact, the arrow is going down. Why is that happening? This feels very counterintuitive. The answer is because we are in normal mode. By default, when you open any file inside Vim, Vim is in default mode. And if you type anything, for example, H, it does nothing. It's not supposed to do anything. Normal mode is for you to navigate this cursor throughout your file by pressing. You can press arrow keys, but we'll very soon get to what you should ideally press if you want to move the cursor along. But what is the learning? When you are in normal mode, you can move the cursor around. You cannot edit the file. You cannot type anything. This is highly in contrast to Visual Studio Code, where if I open a file in Visual Studio Code, I can simply start typing inside. There is no concept of a normal mode or a visual mode, but inside Vim or but inside Vim at the very least, there are 3 modes that exist. The first one is the normal mode. The second one, let's skip visual mode for now, is insert mode. When you are in insert mode, you can pretty much type anything. How can you move from normal mode over to insert mode? By pressing the I key. I repeat, if you press I, now if I type anything anywhere, it will actually appear in the file. If I press escape, I will move back to normal mode. Now if I try to type anything, nothing is happening. If I press I again, I can type again. So if you want to type anything inside a Vim editor, you have to press I to reach insert mode. If you want to exit out of insert mode, you can press escape. Harkirat, what is the benefit of doing this? Why doesn't insert mode exist by default? That's a good question. There are a few answers. The biggest answer I can probably give you is, there are a few commands that you can run. For example, if I press :Q! You can see it written on the bottom left over here. If I press enter, it exits out of the file. I repeat, if I press :Q! And press enter, I exit out of the file. If it was in insert mode by default, if there was no concept of a normal mode, how would Vim know whether you're trying to exit the file or you're trying to, type something? So it very clearly distincts, if you want to navigate, if you want to run any command, please run the command in normal mode. If you want to edit, go to the place where you want to edit, go into insert mode. You can see insert written over here. That pretty much tells you you are in insert mode, and then type whatever you want. So the very first thing to keep in mind is as soon as you open a file, you won't be able to edit it unless you move from normal mode to insert mode. And how do you exit a Vim file, which is the biggest question, that will complicate your life a lot, because a lot of times when you're starting to learn Vim, you will open a session and you will not remember how to exit it, and you'll just have to close the terminal. I don't know how many of you have done this. I did this a lot initially. So make sure you remember escape:q exclamation to exit out of the file. These are the two things we have learned until now: normal mode and insert mode. What is the third mode? It's called visual mode. This is for selecting a bunch of content to, let's say, copy. When you're in normal mode, how can you copy 3 lines, let's say? There is no easy way other than, using your mouse, which is something you don't never recommend it in, software development. You sort of tend to move away from the mouse. So how can I select a bunch of lines? That's what visual mode means. It says if you press V and then navigate, as you can see, I'm able to select a bunch of content. Once I select a bunch of content, I can delete it. Don't ask how it's deleted. We'll get to it very soon. But that's the benefit of using visual mode. So what are the 3 modes? Normal mode, where you can simply navigate but not select anything. Visual mode, if I press V, then I can navigate and select a bunch of lines. And what is the third mode? Insert mode, by pressing I. That lets you not just navigate but also type. How can you move from insert mode back to normal mode? Press the escape key. How can you move from visual mode back to the normal code? Again, V will take you to the visual mode. Escape will take you back to the normal mode. Cool. These are the 3 modes that exist. Try to digest this a bit. It's a little counterintuitive because in Visual Studio Code, there's no concept of, commands or visual mode. You just, press shift and copy everything. The same thing, unfortunately, does not happen inside Vim. Given that we understand the 3 modes, hopefully, let's understand some common commands that you need to know if you want to navigate your file, if you want to copy, paste, undo, redo, things like these. Some of these are relevant for normal mode. Some of these are relevant for visual mode. Insert mode, you don't really need any command over there because you're just typing a bunch of things. But normal mode and visual mode, it's a good idea to know all of these commands. It's not a good idea. It's something you definitely need to know. The first thing, how do you navigate up, down, left, right? You might feel like the best way is to use the arrow keys, and it is. You can still use the arrow keys. As you can see, I'm using the arrow keys and able to navigate the file. But a common sort of practice in Vim is to use H, L, J, and K. I repeat, H for going left, L for going right, J for going down, and K for going up. You can always change these, but these are the defaults that come. God knows why they chose it. Feels very counterintuitive. I think A, S, D, and W would have been better options, very similar to games, but it is what it is. And this is the part that will probably take you the most time. Took me the most time. I still get confused amongst J and K, what goes up and what goes down. But yeah, I've kept a limerick here. Feel free to ignore it if you want to remember it. I don't think this limerick will help at all. You just have to get used to pressing H, L, K, and J. So K for going up, J for going down, H for going left, L for going right. Pretty counterintuitive, right? L for going right, not left, and H for going left. The easier you're able to incorporate these, the better. Again, practice a bit. H for going left, L for going right, K for going up, J for going down. Given you understand this, and if you don't understand this, it's fine. You can just use the arrow keys. Another common use case is, how do you go to the beginning of a line? How do you go to the end of the line? How would you do the same thing in Visual Studio Code? If there are a bunch of lines, how would you go to the end of the line? You'll press Option left to go to the beginning of the line and Option right to go to the end of the line. Similarly, if you want to do the same thing in Vim, you can press 0 to go to the beginning of the line and $ to go to the end of the line. Pretty popular use case for you to go to the beginning or the end of any line. So yeah, 0 for the beginning, $ for the end. What's next? E and B. A lot of times you want to navigate, between words, by which I mean, as you can see, I'm skipping words as I'm going left. And similarly, I'm skipping through words as I'm going to the right. The way to do that in Visual Studio Code is option left and option right. The way to go to the leftmost of the file is actually command left and command left. So command left to go to the leftmost, command right to go to the rightmost, options left to skip a word and go left, option right to skip a word and go right. The same thing you can do inside Vim by pressing E for going to the right and B for going back, and skipping a word if you want to quickly navigate through a line. So what have we learned? 0 to go to the beginning of the line, $ to go to the end of the line, E to go in the forward direction, B to go in the backward direction. We're getting pretty close. Like, these are not too many shortcuts you need to know, but it will take you a long time to get used to them. Practice is what helps here. Next up, going to the top of the file and going to the bottom of the file. If you press GG, it takes you to the top of the file. If you press capital G, so that's Shift and G, that takes you to the bottom of the file. So GG, top of the file, Shift G, bottom of the file, $, end of the line, 0, beginning of the line, E to go forward, B to go backward. The earlier you understand these, the better. These are good enough. You probably need more, but these are probably the ones you'll be pressing the most when you're in normal mode, because you're just navigating the file. And when you navigate a file, even in Visual Studio Code, if your code is towards the end, you go to the end of the file and then go up. If your code is towards the beginning, you go to the beginning, go down a bit. So I feel these are, good enough for you to navigate a file. Let's open a bigger file maybe and try it out. Let's open a random package.json file, not very big, but let's say I want to access something here in the workspaces section. I can press G and go up a bit by pressing K, and I reach here and I can make my edits. How do I add something below it? $ to go to the end, I to go in insert mode, right arrow key to go to the end, add my changes, let's say db/*, and then escape, good to go. That's how you edit a very big file. There are other things. If I knew I had to edit workspaces, I can actually directly go here as well. But we will reach here when we reach the extra commands section. For now, GG, top of the file, capital G, bottom of the file, $, end, 0 in the middle, K to go up, J to go down, L to go right, H to go left, and then E to go forward, and B to go back. That's it for normal mode. There's another one called paste here. Let's reach this when we sort of reach the copy and the paste section. With that, let's move to visual mode, which is frankly very similar to normal mode. Let me open a smaller file again so as to not confuse you. Given I have this Docker file again, and I ask you to copy all 3 of these commands, how can you do it? You can navigate to the beginning, open visual mode if you remember, and then go down a bit. I have selected 3 lines. How do you copy 3 lines? You might intuitively think you press C, but that is not the case. You press Y. Y stands for yanked. In fact, as you can see, it says 6 lines yanked over here. Given that we have yanked or copied 3 lines, or 6 lines in this case, I can press P to paste them over here. I repeat, let's say this is the line I want to copy and paste. I will press V to start visual mode. I will press $ to go to the end. I can also use $G, GG, capital G to navigate. I don't necessarily have to use arrow keys. Now I want to copy this file. How will I copy this? Copy this line, Y to copy it, and then go wherever I want to paste it, and then press P to paste it. I don't have to go into insert mode. If I go into insert mode and press P, it'll just put P in position. I have to be in normal mode and then press P to paste the specific line that I've copied. So what have we learned? Okay, visual mode lets you navigate very similar to normal mode. You can press V and press capital G to select everything below it. Press GG to copy everything above it. Press $ to go to the end of this cursor. If I go here, press 0 to go back, press $ to go to the end of the line, so on and so forth. You can still navigate using everything that was mentioned here. Plus the extra thing we learned is Y to yank and then P to paste it. One sort of other important command that was eventually going to come very soon, okay, it's here, is to cut a specific line. So let's say I ask you to not copy, but cut all of these lines. You can select them and then press D. That's similar to copying it to clipboard, but also deleting these files, which is popularly known as cut, if you've sort of ever cut a folder in Windows. And again, if I press P, I get all 4 of the lines pasted everywhere. To recap, what have we learned? How to navigate a file, J, K, L, and H. How to go to the beginning and the end of the line, dollar to the end, 0 to the beginning. E and B to quickly navigate lines. GG and capital G to go to the top and the bottom of a file. P to paste anything you've copied. The same things you can do in visual mode. If I press V, I can press J to go down, K to go up, L to go right, and H to go left. I can go to the beginning of a line. I can go to the end of a line by pressing 0 and dollar. I can press E and B to quickly navigate in between lines, and then GG and G to go to the top or to the bottom. Y to yank, or if I want, I can also cut everything, and then P to paste it. All right, that's pretty much it. That's how you navigate normal mode, visual mode, and insert mode. Next up, I'll take you through some extra commands. These you need to know. I don't skip these. And after these also, there are a bunch of sort of commands that you eventually can get to. I think everything I've discussed is enough. For Vim, a lot of these might not be enough for Neovim, which is coming eventually. But for Vim, to edit a random file, I think this is a great start. Let's get into the extra commands that you need to know. The biggest one, as I mentioned before, is exiting out of Vim. This gets overly complicated as time goes by. So let me just quickly share. Not as time goes by, it's initially very overly complicated, eventually becomes very easy. Escape to make sure you're in normal mode, and then :Q to exit. If you try just :Q, it will tell you you're trying to exit without saving anything. I repeat, if I press :Q, enter, it says no write since last change, add ? To overwrite. What this means is it's telling you, bro, you haven't written any of your changes. You've made a bunch of changes. You've not updated them. Are you sure you want to exit out of here? It is very similar to if I go to Visual Studio Code, add a bunch of changes and close it, close this one. It gives me a warning. Are you sure you want to exit? You haven't saved any of your changes. Very similar warning I'm getting over here when I press escape :Q. If you add exclamation, it means I know that I've not written any file and I don't mind. I'm going to exit without saving any changes. Adding an exclamation at the very end is similar to closing and pressing don't save over here. I repeat, similar to closing and pressing don't save over here. Harkirat, how do I save while I'm exiting? Great question. We'll get to that very soon. But firstly, escape :Q exclamation to exit. If I open it again, all the changes have been reverted because I did not save my file, which begs the question, how do you save a file, Harkirat? Let me add, another line over here. And now try to save this. The way to save it is escape :W, enter. I repeat, what is it? Escape :W, enter. It means I'm saving my file. I am not exiting it. I am saving it. If you want to save and exit together, you can press :W, Q, enter. That will save the file and also exit it. And notice it did not give me any warning. The reason is, I'm exiting while saving the file. Even if I press :Q now, it will let me exit because I haven't made any changes in this session. So I can press :Q and exit. But if I edit a file, then if I press :Q, it won't let me exit until I add an exclamation to the very end. Cool. That's pretty much it. :Q exclamation, and then :WQ. Probably don't need exclamation over here. Lastly, undo, redo, and some search that will make it easy for you to navigate the file. Undo and redo is fairly straightforward. If I add some code that I want to revert, I can just press U. It will undo the last change in the stack. If I want to redo the changes, I can press Control R. Yeah, Control R on a Mac machine, probably be Control R on Ubuntu and Windows as well. So U to undo command, or Control R to redo. U, Control R, U, Control R. Yeah, that's undo and redo, fairly straightforward. Again, I can keep repeating it, but you'll just learn it as you practice this, and it becomes muscle memory. Lastly, Searching, one more sort of common use case is the use case that I showed you a while back, which is what if I'm in a file and I'm trying to edit the package.json over there. And let's say I want to reach this workspaces section. I can either go to the end of the line and navigate above, or I can press /workspaces. It'll basically means take me to the very first mention of the word workspaces. So what does slash anything do? If I press /package manager, it takes me to the beginning of wherever package manager is written. If it's written multiple times, for example, lint is written twice, I can press /lint and press N to go to the next use of it, and P, or not P, probably something else to go to the previous usage of it. I totally forgot. I thought it was P, but seems like it isn't. So lint /lint will take me to the first usage of lint, and then N to go to the next usage of lint. Yeah, and let me know in the comments how do you go behind. I'm sure there's an easy key for it. Lastly, okay, so what have we learned for search until now? If you want to search and reach a specific point, for example, if I want to reach here, the way to do that is @ repo /typescript /config, sorry, not @ slash with @ repo /typescript config. There is a typo over here, @ repo /type, and there you go. I reach over here, I can now edit this specific file or this specific line. The second question is, how do you reach a line number? Now you don't see any line numbers here, so it's very hard for you to tell, okay, I want to reach format, so I want to reach line number 10. It's very easy to add line numbers in Vim, or eventually we'll reach Neovim where you see line numbers. But let's say you wanted to go to line number 10. You can go there by pressing colon and then 10. That will take you to line number 10. Colon 20 will take you to line number 20, so on and so forth. So how do you reach a specific line number in Vim? Colon followed by the line number. That's pretty much it. I think this is a good primer to know the commands. Given these commands, you can start to edit a file. For example, if I ask you remove the prepare line over here, you'll press /prepare and then you will delete the line. How do you delete the line? You can either do this, go to the beginning, visual mode, go to the end and delete it, or let me share another shortcut which I forgot to share in the slides. Press DD, so D twice, to delete a specific line, and then I'll go to the end and then delete the comma over here. Cool. Let's say I ask you to replace this star with some specific version. So how would you do it? @ repo /eslint, go to the end and then replace it with whatever version you want. Yeah, so I think everything we've discussed is a great starting point to start developing in Vim, but you can make this more and more configurable. And I'm sure there are keystrokes or key maps that I've missed. So yeah, as time goes by, feel free to incorporate more, but this is a great start to start editing everything in Vim. We are done with the very first tool for today. Next up, we're going to understand something called Vimium, which a lot of people asked for in a GSOC video of mine. Vimium basically lets you navigate the browser without using a mouse at all. So without using a mouse, how can you click links? How can you open specific websites, play a video, search, so on and so forth? Let's get to that in the next section. All right, next up, we're going through something called Vimium. Vimium is a Chrome extension that lets you navigate the browser with just your keyboard. The reason it's called Vimium is because the key bindings you use to navigate the browser are the same ones that we've already discussed in the last section. So it lets you navigate your browser by using the standard Vim key bindings. Let's look at what that means. The first thing you want to do if you want to install Vimium inside your Chrome is go to the link and add it to Chrome. I already have it over here. So if I close all the tabs and then maybe open the slides on the right and open a random Google page on the left, I can, cleared my browser history a bit. I can search for something random. If I do, I can now navigate up and down. How? Can you guess? I can press J to go down. I can press K to go up. I don't need my mouse anymore. I can navigate up and down by using J and K. If this page was a little bit bigger and there was horizontal scrolling, can you guess what I would have used? I would have used L and H. Oh, this does have horizontal scrolling, so there you go. What else do you want to do? You want to go to the top of the page, GG. You want to go to the bottom of the page, capital G. There are a bunch of other commands here. Let's look at them one by one. The first one is called question mark. It lets you pretty much see the help dialog. And if you forget about any of the key bindings, if you want to learn about new ones, you can press question mark. I've never pressed it, if I'm being honest. I just know the standard ones and then I just use them to navigate. D and U, this is something important. This is something that does not exist in Vim. If you press D, it takes you down half a page. If you press U, it takes you up down a page, half a page. So if you want to navigate up and down slightly faster than using just J and K, you can use D for down and U for up. R to reload. So if you press R, it'll reload the page. You don't have to press Command R. Harkirat, I already have Command R. Yeah, you do. You don't need R. There's no real benefit you get here. The biggest benefit you get is D, U, GG to the top of the page, capital G to the bottom of the page. And yeah, the next one is super important. If you're on this page, how do you navigate to the first link over here? How do you navigate to the second link? The answer is by pressing the F key. If you press F, you'll notice on top of all accessible elements, you see a bunch of alphabets. If you want to navigate to this page, for example, you can simply press J and it will open that page in the same tab. If you want to go back in history, press capital H. And given you know that information, given you know, okay, you can go back in history by pressing capital H. Can you guess how you can go front in history or forward in history? It's L, right? If you scroll left by pressing H, scroll right by pressing L. Going back in history is capital H, going front in history is capital L. So capital L to go forward, capital H to go back. F is the most important key. If you press F, it'll give you a bunch of alphabets. If you want to, for example, press this specific button, you can press SH and it'll add that specific filter. If you want to remove that filter, press F, and as you can see, J is on top of the X icon. So if I press J, it goes away. If you want to open the same thing in a new tab, you can just press capital F and then, H. Oh, sorry, wasn't a link. Let's try that one more time. Capital F and then that specific thing. Open the same thing in a new tab. Capital F, K. Not what I was hoping for. Let's go. Capital F, SJ will open the thing in a new tab. And that's pretty much it. The most important thing to know here is F and navigating through links. Everything else is fairly straightforward. Everything else is things you can do without Vimium as well. For example, you can always go down by pressing spacebar and go up by pressing shift spacebar. You don't need D and U, but the biggest place where you cannot use your mouse is navigating links, or the most difficult thing without using your mouse inside the browser is navigating links, and the F key is how you do it. Let's see if I'm missing something. F is done. Tab management is another thing. In case you don't feel like pressing Command Tab to go through tabs, you can use these shortcuts, but yeah, you don't really need them. Capital J to go back a tab and capital K to go forward a tab. I repeat, J generally is for going down, K is generally for going up, capital K for going forward in tabs, capital J for going back in tabs, and G0 for going to the first tab, $, for going to the last tab. That's pretty much it. I guess the important ones are D and U, F, and then maybe G0 and $, in case you need it. There are a bunch of others. You don't necessarily need to restrict yourself to just the ones that I've shared. These are the most popular ones. And if you ever want to, change them, you can always go to Vimium settings over here and add a bunch of key maps. For example, I've added map B scroll to bottom. So if I press B over here, it takes me to the bottom of the page. I don't necessarily have to press, capital G. Capital G works as well, but I can also press B. Why? Because I've added this specific map over here. I'm sure you can always unmap B or whatever. Capital G scroll to bottom, and that should remove the binding for G or something similar. G, I still see it. G, I don't. Yeah, I still see it. I'm sure there's a way, maybe unset. Oh, there is unmap, right? Unmap G. Okay, let's try that. Save. Now if I press G, nothing happens. But if I press B, it takes me to the bottom of the page. So feel free to, customize it according to your needs. But I feel the default is enough. And as I said, the most important ones are DU, F, and then these. With that, we'll move to the next section. Next one is an interesting one. I already had a video on it. It got taken down because there was a music copyright strike. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of it. But if you want, I'll leave in the description a nice tutorial. If you're in the cohort, that video is part of the cohort. Like I've put it somewhere there, but I can't put it on YouTube because of copyright reasons. Let's move on to the next section. Let's understand Neovim. All right. Next up, we're discussing Neovim. Neovim, if I'm not wrong, is a fork of Vim that's sort of being maintained very actively. It has a very rich ecosystem of plugins. Harkirat, what are plugins? Pretty much things that let you do, this inside the terminal. As you can see, there are a bunch of colors, color encodings. You can go from one file to another. You see a sidebar. All of these things can be created inside the terminal by using other people's plugins. And that is what Neovim lets you do. Does Vim let you do the same? Yes. Vim also has the concept of plugins and letting other people create plugins for you. But Neovim lets you do it in Lua, which is a language if you might have heard of it. Creating a plugin in Neovim is not too difficult. There are a bunch of videos I'm happy to link in the description. And creating your own sort of Neovim config is something you should aim for. But if you don't want to, get into the hassle of understanding Lua or developing your own configuration, you can use a pre-built configuration. The most popular ones are NVChad and LazyVim. The tutorial that I had used LazyVim, which pretty much in like a bunch of installation steps brings a very nice configuration onto your system that gives you, something like this. What are the steps to install Neovim and LazyVim /NVChad? The first step is just installing Neovim on your machine. So if you go here and select whatever platform that you might have, in my case, that is macOS, you can either probably download a binary from here. Yeah. Or you can, I'm sure, use, there you go, brew to install it. Either way, when you install Neovim on your machine, you'll see something like, you'll not see something similar to what you see here. You see this right now because I'm using the other thing that I talked about, LazyVim. You will see a very naive, simple screen, very similar to what you saw on Vim. So you'll pretty much see something like this. But if you want to, convert this in Neovim into this, you can use, one of these two pre-built configurations. Or if you want, you can also go to .config/nvim and create your own configurations here in the .config/nvim/lua folder. I'll link a few tutorials in the description. I've tried this once. It's not very easy to do if you don't know Lua. So probably step one might be understanding Lua or VimScript. I think you can create plugins and your custom key maps in Vim using VimScript as well. But I'd rather just go with Lua in case you're thinking of doing it. This is a tough choice. Should you create your own sort of configuration or should you copy over someone else's configuration? The general rule of thumb is you should probably create your own, because the whole goal of, a system like this or, generally moving to the terminal is that you are able to customize things according to your needs. You'll only be able to do it if you're creating your own plugins or, creating your own configuration. So if you have the time, create your own configuration. If you want to use Vim for a real project, but you don't have the time to create your own custom configuration, is when, you can use something like this. If you're using specifically LazyVim, the key maps remain the same, very similar to what we discussed in the first section, but you get a bunch of extra things. So if I go and open this project, there are some standard, key maps that you can use. For example, if you press leader E, where leader, okay, so what is a leader? A leader basically is a key that you press, which by default is space. So if I press space, you'll see a bunch of, options over here that you can choose from. So if I press space and then E, as you can see, it says explore Neotree, which basically means, open or close the sidebar. If I press space and E, that's for opening and closing the sidebar. You can navigate the sidebar very similar to how you navigate files. You can press J and K, open a file, and then, start editing it. It also has LSP support. Harkirat, what is an LSP? LSP stands for language server protocol, if you've heard of it. It basically is the thing that lets editors navigate files. So if I, open a real file over here and, go to the top of the file, end of the file, and then if I want to see the actual definition of this specific import, I can press G followed by D, which means go to definition, and it'll take me to this page. All of these things, I think Neovim has inbuilt LSP support. Like you don't need an external plugin for it. I could be wrong, but either way, the reason it's much better than plain Neovim or plain Vim is that you can actually build a project in here. I don't think you can do that in plain Vim or plain Neovim. You need a bunch of configurations to be able to navigate a TypeScript project, for example. There are a bunch of standard key maps that you can use here. For example, if you press square bracket left and then B, it'll take you to the left tab, and then the other side of bracket and B, that'll take you to the right tab. Space or leader FF will let you search through the files. For example, problems.ts, and then GD, as I said, go to definition. The standard Vim key maps remain the same. GG to the top of the file, G to the bottom of the file. If you want to search for something, / db.collections, and it takes you here, so on and so forth. So it's a combination of the Vim key maps that we discussed in the first section, plus you can customize it for things that Vim doesn't provide you out of the box. Let's keep it this big. I think we can get deeper into a new Vim tutorial. I can create a fresh one, but if I do create a fresh one, I'll probably be creating my configuration from scratch. I think that will be an interesting video, but probably need a video on Lua first, because else it'll probably just complicate everything. With that, I think we can move to the next section, and my only suggestion would be only do this if you really want to use Vim for a full stack or whatever project, and you really need a pre-built configuration. You don't want to build your own. Else, take your time, build your own configuration from scratch, and go from there. With that, let's move to the next section. I think we're done with all the Vim specific commands. Vim specific tools. Next up, we'll be understanding something called window managers. This will be an interesting one. I'll see you there. All right, next up, we're understanding window managers. Window management basically means as you have more and more windows to, do 10 different things in, a manager that lets you manage all of them. For example, if you want to divide your window into 4 parts and put various things in various places, you can use a window manager. There are fancy window managers, especially if you're using Linux. So if you are using a Linux-based machine, I would urge you to try i3. I tried it once in college when I was using Ubuntu. It's pretty fancy and very powerful, but also not for beginners. If you're on a Mac machine though, you can use Rectangle. This is something someone recently suggested to me probably a month ago, and I've been using it very often now. Rectangle is only for Mac. So if you're on a Windows machine, find an alternate. What do these softwares let you do? Rectangle pretty much lets you do something like this. Make this full screen, take this to the right, take this to the top of the screen, so on and so forth. So if I have, multiple browsers to deal with, I can put them side by side. The shortcuts specifically for Rectangle, which I think only works for Mac, but I could be wrong, are Command plus Option, and then, Control plus Option, and then Enter to make it full screen. So if you want to make a specific window full screen, Control Option Enter. And if you want to move it to the right, Control Option right arrow key, left arrow key, up arrow key, down arrow key. So that's pretty straightforward. If you want to make this go to the top right, then it's Command Shift U for top left, I for top right, J for top left, and K for bottom left, and K for bottom right. So yeah, as you have more and more windows, and if you don't want to use your mouse to keep doing this, which is something that I used to do too much, and someone in the cohort only suggested it gets a little too jarry to move so many windows around, is when I sort of got recommended Rectangle. It's a more miniature version of a real window manager. A real window manager lets you, for example, put one configuration. By configuration I mean one Chrome tab and one Brave tab in one window, and then you can have another window that has just your terminal and Visual Studio Code, let's say, and then a third one that has your music setup, fourth one that has your work setup, fifth one that has your Slack, so on and so forth. So yeah, if you really want to get fancy, and if you have a Linux based machine, try i3. If not, rectangle does the job for me. And there are like a bunch of others. So like feel free to find an alternate for Windows as well. That's it for window managers. Pretty straightforward. All right, next up, let's understand shell configuration files. What does shell mean, Harkirat? Think of it as the terminal. Anytime you open the terminal, the thing that sort of interprets all of your commands. If I press ls here and you get back all the files in this folder, the thing that interprets it is what's called the shell. The most common shell is something called bash, if you've heard of it. It has a full form. B stands for something, A stands for something, and SH stands for shell. If you are on a Linux based machine, most probably the thing that's interpreting all your commands is bash. Personally for me, I use something called ZSH, which is why you see some colors that might be different from your machine. If I go to a specific folder, for example, you see the branch that I'm on. Things like these come because I'm not using bash. I'm using something called ZSH. That detail doesn't really matter. What matters is, okay, what are shell configuration files? Given that you have any shell, could be a bash session or could be ZSH, irrespective of what kind of shell you have, what if you could run some commands before the terminal actually starts? I repeat, if I'm opening this terminal over here, before it starts, for the first few seconds, what if I could run a bunch of commands? The question you might have in your head is, Harkirat, why would I want to run any commands before the terminal starts? It's a terminal, it is starting in its own time. Why would I want to run something before the user can input anything? That is a great question. And that's probably the foundation for why you need shell configuration files. Let's start with a very small example. What are we trying to answer? We're trying to answer why do we need to run some commands before we start a terminal. The example is as follows. Let's say you are in a GitHub repository, it doesn't matter which one. And here you have to run a command very often. The command might be git status. Let's say you're running git status very often. Okay? Every 20 seconds or every 10 seconds, you have to type git status. Wouldn't it be nice if you could make this command slightly smaller? If you could just type, I don't know, ss or gs or git s, and that would automatically translate to this git status command. Yes, Harkirat, that might be nice. How can you do that? You can do that by creating what's called an alias. You can do something like this. Okay, alias git s equal to git status. What would this do? That would create an alias for git s or for git status. Okay, anytime now you type git s, it's the same as typing git status. That is how you can shorten commands inside the terminal. Great. I understand how we can shorten commands inside the terminal, Harkirat. I still don't understand what are shell configuration files and why do you need them? The answer is you've created this alias in this terminal. Git s is a shorthand in this terminal now. But if I switch to a new terminal, if I create a fresh session, let's say I open a new terminal here and try to do the same thing, it will say command not found. Git s does not exist as a command. I repeat, the original terminal has this alias, but the new terminal still doesn't have this alias. So what is the problem? Okay, you can create aliases, but now anytime you're opening a new terminal, you have to run this command again and again. Wouldn't it be nice if I could create a configuration file where I put all of these aliases and that configuration file runs before a terminal starts? I repeat, what if I could take this command? Let me close everything. And what if I could put this inside a file? Let's say the file is random or startup file.sh. Let's say I put this command over here. What is the command? Alias git s equal to git status inside a file called startup file.sh. And what if this startup file runs or gets what's called sourced? If I run source startup file.sh and if I press enter, that basically runs all the commands that exist inside this file. What was the command that existed inside the file? It was this. And since I have sourced it, I have ran all of these commands, I can now type git s and it gives me the error because I'm not in the right folder. But if I go to the right folder and then I press git s, it works. So what have I done? I've created a file called startupfile.sh and I want it to run before the terminal starts. Right now I had to manually source it. But what if there was a file that existed that would automatically get sourced anytime a terminal is opened? That is what shell configuration files let you do. Again, what are shell configuration files? They are files inside which you can, write a bunch of this code. As you can see, I have a bunch of aliases inside my personal configuration file. And anytime I open a terminal, if I open a fresh session, during the first few seconds when you see a loader over here, or you don't see anything over here, that shell file is actually running. Harkirat, where does this shell file exist? Is it this random file that you had created? No. That depends on what type of terminal you're using. As I said, most probably you're using bash. So for you, it might be in the root folder in the bash.bash rc file. I repeat, where should you write all of these alias commands? In the .bash rc file if you're using bash. If you're using zsh, which you can pretty much prove if you see colors like these, then the file where you have to write all of this code is .zsh rc. So if I open .zsh rc, you can see it has a bunch of things inside. If you remove all the comments, it looks very similar to this. So this is my configuration file. It has a bunch of things that zsh automatically put in there, which it probably needs to run before the terminal begins. And then this is something that most probably Node put in there so that NVM as a command exists. Then this is something that Nvim or Neovim put in there so that I can access Nvim as a command over here. And then lastly, these are the aliases that I have. These are some extra aliases that I added. Okay, if I want to move back 4 folders, I can simply type .4 and I go back to 4 folders. If I'm in projects, daily code, apps, web, public. If I'm in this folder and I want to go back 4 folders, rather than typing this, I can simply type .4 and I go back 4 folders. And you can add whatever you want in there. Usually these .files contain aliases and some complex functions that let you do a bunch of things. For example, here I have a function called hg, which basically lets you do history grep. Here, what is history grep? Before that, you probably need to know what history is. So if you type history, you see all the commands that you've run a few minutes ago, or the last set of commands that you ran. For example, the very last command that I ran was .4. What if I want to search all of the commands that started with git, or had git in that specific command? The way I can do that is, if you've heard of grep, then you probably know how to do this. If you have not heard of grep basically lets you reverse search, in this case, through all your files and folders. So if I type grep-ir and then projects, daily code, hi there, and /daily code, it will search for hi there through all the files that exist in this daily code. So grep basically lets you search across files, folders, a single file. As you can see here, I searched for hi there and it showed me a bunch of files where hi there as a string exists. But what do I want to do? I want the history-c command, all the output from this gets piped to grep, and I don't have to do a reverse search here, and I can search for whatever git. History file deleted. Oh God, what have I done? Oh shoot, history dash deletes the history. Why did I type? I was deleting history recently in some place, so God. So all my history is gone, which is very bad. History dash c deletes the history. I don't know why I ran this. So let me run a few commands: git status, git commit, ls cd prisma, git status. Now I have some history. I don't know why I did this. Okay, all my history is gone, which is very bad because I used to reverse search from time to time, but now I cannot reverse search. A lot of my popular commands are gone. Never mind. I deleted all my history, and because I ran history-c. If you run history-c, it sort of deletes all your history, but it's fine. Given I have such a small history now, how do I search for just the commands that have git in it? And the answer is I can do this. History, pipe over to grep, and I want to search for git. And if I run this command, it shows me the 3 commands that have git inside it. This isn't, just search on the first 3 letters. I can also have, done something like this: git random git status. And now if I do the same thing, it also has random git status in here. But yeah, this is just one of many, things you might want to do. And you can create functions like these that let you do the same thing. So now if I use hg, I can simply do hg git, and it will search for git throughout my history. I don't have to run the whole thing. That's another place you might want to use, dotfiles. Sorry, I'm still in a little bit of a shock. I deleted my history. Either way, the point is this file is, very complex for a lot of people. It's not very complex for me. If you look at my ZSHRC, it's very complex on my other laptop. I haven't copied it over here. I don't know why. It's not very complex on my other laptop either, I say. But yeah, if you look at it, these are the aliases that I've added. This is probably something bun added by default. This is something Neovim added. This is something bun added, so on and so forth. So you can make this very complex. You can find a bunch of popular dot files on GitHub, on Google, and use them as well. That's a brief of it. Again, for you it would depend whether or not your configuration file is .zshrc or if it is .bashrc. Most probably it will be .bashrc if you're on a Linux machine. But if you've installed ZSH, if you see colors like these, then most probably it will be ZSHRC. If you have a different shell, then it will be whatever is the configuration file for it. Again, to recap, what happens anytime I'm opening my terminal, this specific script is getting sourced, which is adding all of these aliases. And for that reason, I can use commands like gc and get it expanded to git space commit space -m. Those are shelf configuration files for you. We're moving to the most interesting part of today's session. Next up, we're going to understand Tmux, or terminal multiplexing. All right, the last tool for today is called Tmux. It stands for terminal multiplexer. Now you might think, Harkirat, terminal multiplexing, that probably means opening multiple terminal windows right next to each other. You already have a bunch of fancy terminals for that. Why do you need Tmux? What exactly does Tmux provide you? That's a good point. In fact, if I open iTerm over here, which is my sort of common terminal that I use, even if you don't use iTerm, I think if you open the standard terminal in Mac as well, you can create multiple tabs, have multiple windows open. So why do you need Tmux? That's a good question. And the answer is that it gives you something more than that. It does let you create multiple panes, very similar to iTerm. So if I open iTerm, I can split it horizontally, split it vertically. I can get multiple terminals or multiple panes in the same terminal. But Tmux gives you something extra. Let's understand what that is. The problem with normal terminals is that they don't have long running sessions. I repeat, normal terminal like this does not have long running sessions. If I start a long running process here, for example, if I type htop over here, which is a command that lets you see your CPU usage. If this does not work for you, try typing top. That will probably give you something like this. Both of these are long running processes. And the problem is that if I close this terminal by mistake, and if I restart it, I cannot revert back to my original state. I cannot create a long running session. Similarly, I might have a very fancy layout. Okay, maybe I'll, have a very nice split layout. Here, I'll open one specific folder. Here, I'll open another specific folder and run npm run dev. Here, I'll probably be, opening the folder in Neovim. Here, I might be in a third folder. I might have this very fancy setup. But the problem is, again, if the terminal closes, if the machine restarts, this layout, this session with, Neovim open here, something running here, and this specific third terminal having something goes away. And that's a problem. We have no way to maintain sessions, maintain layouts across terminal closes. If I close the terminal, this very fancy layout that I had went away. This is where Tmux comes into the picture. Tmux lets you create something called sessions that are long running sessions. Even if you exit out of the terminal, the session is still running in the background. That is what Tmux lets you do. It lets you create other things as well, something called windows and panes. We'll get to what both of these are very soon. But first up, let's understand what are sessions in Tmux. How can you create a session, and how does it take away this problem of, you having a terminal, a very fancy layout and long running processes. For example, something like this, I might have a long running process here and Neovim open here. How can I retain this layout across terminal closing and then a fresh terminal opening? Step 1, install Tmux. If you go to this page over here, you will find installation steps based on the operating system you are on. Install it on your machine. Once you do, if you open the terminal now, you can run the following command to start a Tmux session. I repeat, you can run the command Tmux and press enter, and this will, what happens when you run a command? Some program starts, right? So the program that started in my terminal is Tmux. And if you look at it, Tmux gives me a very similar bash session. It's like, okay, you started me. It is orchestrating a bash session for me. And it is cool because if I start a long running process here, and if I close this by default, by mistake, and if I reopen the terminal, I can attach back to the session that I had. I repeat, how did I start the session? I pressed Tmux and pressed enter. I'm not going to again because it will start a new session. But what did I do 20 seconds ago? I started a Tmux session. Inside the session, I wrote the command htop. That's running there. It's still running there. How do I know this? Because if I press the command Tmux ls, it shows me, okay, one session is running, the ID of which is 0, and I can attach back to this session. How can I attach back to this session? You can run the command tmux-a-t0. You don't need -t0 because we have a single session right now. But if you had multiple sessions, the way to attach to a specific session is by running the command tmux attach. The target is the session with ID 0. If I press enter, you will notice it's still running. Even though the terminal was closed and I reopened the terminal, the session is still active. It's still running htop in the background, and I can attach back to it by running the command tmux attach -t0. Where does 0 come from? It's the ID that our session has by default. They sort of go up 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. Why is this cool? Number one, it's cool because a long running process is still running. Whenever I want to, hop back and look at all my performance metrics, I can simply be like tmux attach -s0, -t0, and I can, see my performance metrics over here. I can make this layout very fancy. I can split it here, run another performance command here, run a third performance command here. We'll get to that very soon. But either way, this is how you create a session. This is how you attach to an existing session. Third question in this foundational steps is, how do you detach from a session? Right now, I'm just closing the terminal, but you probably don't want to do that. You should probably need a way to detach and go back to the original terminal. And the way to do that is Control B followed by D. I repeat, how do I attach? Tmux attach, and the target of that specific, the ID of that specific session. How do I detach? Control B followed by D. That will detach from the session and it will take you back to your original terminal. This is your original terminal. When you run this command, you're actually running Tmux, that is orchestrating a bunch of, bash sessions here. Cool. That's how you create a session, attach to a session, detach from a session. Let me detach from it again. What's the command? Command B and then Control B and D. Control B, the thing that you see here at the bottom left, is something you'll see very often. It's very similar to the leader key in Neovim. If I open Neovim, if you remember, space was the leader key that let you run a bunch of commands. Similarly here, in Tmux, whenever you're inside a session, Command B is the leader key over here, or Control B, I guess. You can change this, but this is the default that comes. And you'll see this control B thing is very handy as time goes by. Let me detach from this session, and now let's experiment and play with what we have learned until now. Tmux ls shows me one session created. The power of Tmux is that you can create multiple such sessions. Let me create a session for a project of mine that I'm working on. I'll run the Tmux command, and this will start a new session now. I can also give it a better name. If I create a new session by running just Tmux, the ID that it will have would be 1. I want it to have a better ID. I want it to have a better name. So I can actually, when I'm starting, give it a name like daily, because daily code is the project that I might be editing in this specific session. So if I run this command, the command is of course incorrect, because the command to run is tmux new and then -s the name. If I run this command, now if you look at the bottom left, it says daily over here. This can be my setup for editing the daily code project. So I can go to the daily code project here and open it in Neovim. Now I have 2 Tmux sessions. If I detach back from it, command B and then D, and run Tmux ls, I have 2 sessions. One for all my performance monitoring, one for my daily code project. If I have a third Golang project in the future, I can create a new session for it. That's how you create multiple sessions. We haven't yet explored the complete power of it, but at the very least, we understand how we can have long running sessions that remain even if you close the terminal and restart it. Tmux ls, and then Tmux attach to the daily project, command BD to detach out of it, and then if I want, I can also attach to the first session over here, which is still running htop. Cool. That's the foundation. You can still do a bunch of other things. If you remember, I said sessions, windows, and panes. It has 3 things. We have only explored sessions until now. Next up, let's go through a few more commands, and then we'll understand what are windows and what are panes. These are what give it sort of superpowers. Before we proceed, let's see how many commands we have done. Create a new Tmux session, detach from a session, see all the sessions that you're running, attach to a session with a specific ID, create a new session with an ID, Tmux kill session -t and the name of the session. So if I have 2 sessions right now, I have 3 now. Tmux ls, if I want to delete the first and the second one, I can run tmux kill -session -t0 -t2 and then -t daily. This will pretty much kill all of the sessions that I had. If I run Tmux ls now, as you can see, it says no server is currently running. If I restart Tmux and then exit out of it, Tmux ls will show me 1 session that is running in the background. All right. Cool. We're done with the basic commands. Next up, let's understand pain management, not pain management like I do in my knee right now. I'm applying volume. I mean PANE, pain management. The good thing about item was it would let me create multiple panes. It would let me split my window like this, and Tmux lets you do the same thing. It becomes very powerful when you do that, right? Because if you remember, I created, Tmux new -s daily. I created a new session for editing a specific project of mine. But this isn't a single terminal isn't enough. I need multiple panes inside. Panes basically means splitting this specific terminal into various parts. That is what panes let you do. That's what pane means in this context. The question is, how can you create a vertical split? How can you create a horizontal split so that you have multiple panes? And the answer is, to create a vertical split, control B and then percentage. What did I run? Control B followed by percentage. I'm not going to run it again. But if you run control B percentage, it will create a vertical split. And how can you create a horizontal split? I totally forgot. Let's see. Double quotes. So if I run control B double quotes, it will create a horizontal split. This looks like a fancier setup, right? Now I can move around these 3 panes that I've created and maybe start Neovim over here, run npm run dev over here, run some other third thing over here. Let's do that. Let's use the mouse for now. Eventually we'll see how we can navigate through all three of these using just the keyboard. But for now, oh, you cannot use the mouse, can you? So let's understand how you can navigate through all three of these panes by using just the keyboard. The way to do that is Command B and then arrow key. So if I press Command B and then press the left arrow key, I go to the left, Command B, right arrow key, I go to the right, Command B, and then I can, keep navigating. Keep pressing the wrong command, sorry, Control B. Whenever I say command, just assume Control. Control B, down, up, left, right, down, up, left, right. I can sort of keep going around. If I don't press any arrow key for like a second, then it stops and then, oh, I always do this clear. Then I can sort of navigate using the arrow keys here. But if I press Command B and quickly press the arrow keys, then I can navigate. How do I know what session I'm currently in or what pane I'm currently in? The one that's highlighted in green. So if I press Command B and then go down, this is the one that's currently highlighted. If I press Command B, go up, left, right, down, so on and so forth. That's how you can navigate across various panes. Now, what was this specific session for? This was for a daily project of mine. So let me go to the left pane, go to the right folder, and then open it in Neovim. That's what my first pane is going to do. What am I going to do in my second pane? In my second pane, I want to maybe run npm run dev in the same folder. So cd projects daily code and then npm run dev. This will actually start this project that I'm running over here on a specific port. And then maybe in the third terminal over here, or the third pane over here, I can run htop just to see the CPU usage. I probably wouldn't run this, I would run something else. But now I have a very nice setup of 3 windows or 3 panes, more specifically, or more technically correct term is panes. I have 3 panes. I have this session which has 3 panes inside. I can still detach from the session, Control B and D. It's still running in the background. I can attach back to it by pressing Tmux A. If you don't give it any argument, it just attaches to the most recent session that you had created. But if you want to give it an argument, you can also, do -t daily. If I attach back to the session, I see the 3 panes of mine. If I detach back from it, I go back to my original terminal. That's how you do pane management inside Tmux. Let me attach back and then let me, add a 4th window here just for kicks. Command B left and then Command B double quotes. I have 4 windows now. Let me open some random, I just run top here. And I have 2 long running sessions over here. This is also long running. It's running npm run dev. I have my editor over here. I can, go over here and start to edit a file. For example, the readme file, deploying to Vercel is hard and expensive. And then, if I had edited a source file, this would have reloaded and then, I can visit it in the terminal, in the browser. That's how you can do local development for, let's say, a Next.js project. The best part is you can, just detach from it and then, you can have a similar session for a different Golang project and a different session for a different, Rust project or Java project. So that's good foundation for what 2 things. What have we understood? We've understood we've understood sessions and we've understood panes. We have not understood windows yet. This is when, your recursive mind will blow. But before that, do we understand sessions? Do we understand Tmux lets you create multiple sessions? I have 2 right now. Tmux also lets you create multiple panes inside a single session. So if I go back to Tmux attach -t daily, I can see 4 panes over here and I can detach back from it if need be. Cool. Lastly, let's understand what are windows and why do you need them and what do they provide in the context of Tmux. Let me start with a small hint over here. If you look at the bottom of this specific screenshot, you will see I have multiple things over here. It says 0 ZSH, 1 ping, 2 ZSH. Why are there 3 things over here? What do they even mean? Small hint, this is what a window is. A window effectively lets you create multiple terminals, or more specifically multiple windows inside the same session. A single session can have multiple windows. A single window can have multiple panes. I repeat, let me put this to the right. Let me open the daily session that I had. This whole thing that you see here is a single window inside a session. I can also see the name of the window here. It says 0 Nevim. Basically means this specific window is called Neovim, or is called Nevim, and it has these 4 panes inside. This window has 4 panes. This session has a single window. The daily session has a single window. Window has 4 panes. Question is, how can you create another window over here? The answer is by pressing Command B and then C. If I press Command B followed by C, it creates a new window over here. Now I have 2 windows. I have the original Nevim window where also the 4 things are running. I have the ZSH window over here that was just created where I can run, something else. Let's say something else is super important for daily code. Something like, I always press Command key and it takes away the green thingy. Let me detach and reattach. 2 windows I have, and here let's say I just run, here I run all the performance things. I run top over here, and then let me split vertically and run htop over here. So all the performance related things I am running in this window. And if I go back to the original window, which I can do by Command B, and I totally forgot what it was. Window management. Move around sequentially. There you go. Command B N. So if I press Command B N, it will take me back to this specific window. Command B N will take me again to the next one, so on and so forth. So how can you sequentially move across windows? Control. I keep saying command. Control B N. If I press Control B N, it takes me back to the Neovim window, and I don't need this performance metric anymore. I'm running it in the other place. Same, I don't need this. So let me get rid of them. I can go here. Command B X will let me delete a specific pane. So if I go here and press Command B followed by X, it asks me kill pane 1. I can press Y and the pane goes away. Similarly, if I go back to this session right here, or this pane right here, what command can I run? Command B followed by X and then Y to delete that specific pane. Now in my first window, I have just the code related things. In my second window, I have all the performance related things. Both of these windows are part of which session? They are the part of the daily session right here. I also have another session where, some things are running, we don't care what, but the daily session is very well structured. The daily session has 2 windows and each window has 2 panes. If I restart or if I reattach to the daily session, you will see it has 2 windows, the 0 node window and the 1 htop window. And each of them has 2 panes. This has the 1 htop window that I'm currently in has these 2 panes. If I go back to the other one, this also has 2 panes where, I'll edit my files, run npm run dev, do some other debugging, so on and so forth. That's how you create sessions, windows, and panes in Tmux. You can have, very complex sort of windows here. Okay, by my Tmux window for a full stack project will have just the editor maybe in one window, and then all the processes that you might be running npm run dev in one folder, npm run build in another folder, in a second window, and then the third window might be something like this where you run. I mean, you don't really ever need performance on a full stack project, but some other thing. So that's how you might create very complex sessions. And the best part is your sessions are always there. If you are really thinking of, moving completely inside the terminal for all of your development, you're not using Visual Studio Code, then creating sessions like these is, super helpful because it lets you sort of have your project there ready to go. And you can just attach to the session and, you have everything there. Let's see if I've missed something. And there are some small commands. For example, if you want to rename a session, it says 0 node here, 1 top here. You can rename it by pressing Command B, comma, I repeat, Control B, comma, and then you can just rename the thing to, project files. And then I can go back to the next one, and then I can rename this Command B, comma, and then I can rename this from top to perf. Now I have two windows. The first one is called performance files. The second one is called perf. So you can feel free to like rename it as you wish. What else are we missing? One important thing that we're missing is how can you navigate through all your windows, sessions, and panes now? As you can see, we have a lot of things. It's highly recursive. Just to reiterate one more time, we have two sessions running. If I attach to the first session, you will see it's a very simple session, has a simple empty terminal in there. If I detach from it and attach back to the second one, which I've called daily over here, this one's slightly complex. It has two windows, a project file windows where I have all the project files that I'll be editing, and then maybe something where I can run npm run dev, and it has another window called perf where I can look at all the performance metrics on my machine. This doesn't make sense to be here, but just to show that you can have multiple windows, each window doing something of its own. I've sort of chosen this example. The last thing I want to share is, given these where is the text? There you go. Two sessions, and then first session having one window, and then second session having two windows, and each window having two panes. Wow, this was like really bad for me to move here. I don't know if this gave you any context, but yeah, this is what our Tmux sessions look like right now. The first session has a single window and a single pane, and the second session has two windows. First one has two panes, and the second one also has two panes. Let me make this slightly better. If this is Tmux, I have two sessions. Session number 1 and then session number 2. And then the first session has a single window, and then the second session has two windows. One I called project files, and the other one I called perf. And then the first window over here has two panes. One place where I run, where I have Neovim running, the other place where I have npm run dev running, and then the perf also has two panes. One that has htop running and one that has top running. That's my Tmux sessions right now. If I open them side by side, Tmux has two sessions. How do I know? If I press Tmux ls, it shows me session number 1, session number 2. The first session has a single window. If I attach to it, you will see it has a single window over here called 0zsh. If I want, I can rename it by doing what? Command B, comma, rename it to nothing, because nothing is happening here. And it has a single pane. So I can actually, extend this a little bit further if need be. Okay, why this thing has a single pane where I'm running nothing. Yeah, that's probably technically more correct. That's the first session that we just looked at. Single session has single window, has single pane, which does nothing right now. I can press ls over here, and then I can say, rather than nothing, I'm running ls over here. Either way doesn't matter. That's the first session right here. What is the second session? The second session is called daily, which has 1, 2. It has two windows. So window number 1 called project files, window number 2 called perf. Project files has two panes. If I go to project files, this editor and then this terminal, one runs Neovim, this thing right here. One runs npm rundev, this thing right here. And what does the other one have? The other perf window has htop running in one pane and has top running in another pane. That's a brief of, window, pane and session management in Tmux. The last command, maybe a few more commands that you should probably know is, one of them is command BQ. That pretty much shows you, I don't know if you guys can see this, but let me go to a different one. If I press command BQ, it shows me 0 over here and 1 over here. If you want to quickly move across multiple panes, for example, let's say I have another split over here and then another split over here. If you want to move, directly over here, you can do it via arrow keys, but rather you can run command BQ and it will show you 0 over here, which basically means, you can press command BQ 0 and it'll go over here. Command BQ 1, it'll go over here. Command BQ, oh shoot, I moved to the wrong one. Command BQ 3 and it'll move over here, so on and so forth. So that's one. Command B plus Q. I keep saying command, but it's control. I hope you understand that. And the second one is for very nice window management. If I press Control B W, it shows a layout like this. Don't get overwhelmed by this. This is actually, the easiest layout to look at. It says you have the first session called Windows, which has a single window called nothing. You have a second session called daily, which has one window called project files, and you can, look at all the 4 panes that you have over here, and then another window called perf, where you have these 2 panes running. So it lets you do very nice, movement between sessions and between windows. If I press enter here, I go here. Command BW. If I press enter here, I go to perf. Command BW. If I go back to the original session, I can go there as well. So yeah, this is probably where you'll navigate to windows from. You most probably are not going to cycle through them. This UI, even though it looks ugly, is, the most convenient way to move across sessions and windows. Cool. Let's see if we're missing something, but I think that's pretty much it for Tmux. Kill session is done. Pane management, split vertically, split horizontally, move around and then see the index of a page. Create a new window in the same session. Command BW, list all the, so basically the thing that we have here, list all the windows and sessions. Rename a window we have done, move around sequentially we have done. Command B number lets you move to specific windows. So if I'm here, let's say, let me make this full screen. If I want to move to 1, I can move sequentially, but if I have more, for example, if I create a new one, if I have 1, 2, 3 now, if I want to move from 3 back to 1, I can press command B1 and it will take me to the first window. Command B0 will take me to the 0th window. 2 will take me to the second window. So I can just give the exact number if I want to hop directly to a session. But as I said, most probably you're going to do this. You'll open the window by pressing Control BW, and then you'll navigate to the specific window that you want to. Command BX for killing a pane. Yeah, that's probably one thing to know. How do you kill panes in case you want to? Command B, yeah, both of them will do it. Oh, another nice one that I don't see here is Command Z. So let's begin with Command Z and then we'll go from there. If I go back to this Neovim pane over here, I can do that by just pressing the arrow key, or as I mentioned, Command B Q0. Now that I'm here, when I'm editing a file, even though it's nice to have this terminal on the side, I might want to full screen this for a while and then move back. So the way to full screen a specific pane that you're in is Command B Z. So if you press Z after pressing the leader, you can pretty much full screen your whatever file you're editing, which is cool because you're editing a file, you probably want to see it full screen, and then once you're done with it, Command B Z to restore back the panes. So how do you full screen a specific pane? Command B Z. How do you restore it back? The same thing. That's one. Second one is how do you kill a pane? Given that you have 4 panes over here, I might want to delete this and this. So Command B Q. Command B Q2 to reach here, and then Command B X to delete this. Command B. Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Command B arrow. Command B X to delete this one as well. So that's how you delete a pane. And if you want to delete a session, I think we already discussed this, but command B detach Tmux ls Tmux kill dash session dash T0, and that'll kill this session right here. If I run Tmux ls now, I have a single session. If I run Tmux attach, I don't need to give any arguments. It will by default attach to this guy right here. And then, do your thing. Command B, you'll either be here or be, here navigating between windows. That's where you'll spend most of your time. That's it. And I don't think I'm missing anything else. W is done. X is done. Yep. With that, how was the developer productivity video? Let me know in the comments, and let me know if there's a deeper dive needed for any one of these tools. Yeah, let me know what you like to see next. With that, let's end it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.